does slowly become part of your way of thinking and your way of seeing and perception of the world around you, yourself, others. It did definitely encourage a sort of sensitivity and nuance that I've used in my studies. You know, when I studied philosophy and theology and religious studies and about other people's lives and beliefs and existences, it encourages such a sensitivity and respect for them, and to tolerate other people's beliefs that may be different to yours, and, you know, understanding that they are different, but it isn't like a horrible thing. It's actually quite a wonderful thing that you do share different beliefs, and that you come at it with you come at life with sort of a different perspective and rounded understanding. I think VbE has impacted that in terms of giving a language for it and sort of a nuance about it.
Hello, I'm delighted to be talking to you today about this seventh aspect of VbE. This is the ethical vocabulary. By now, I hope you will have heard about all the 6 other aspects, but we'll just briefly touch on those today. I'm Sue Jones, and I've been a consultant and trainer for values-based education for about 6 years now. Before that, I was a teacher for over 30 years in primary schools and a head teacher for 11 of those years. Both the schools where I was head were values-based schools, and so I've seen at first hand the profound effect that the introduction of values-based education can have on a school community. So just to remind you about the other transformational aspects of values-based education. The first is modelling, demonstrating values-led living. Then comes the inner curriculum, focusing on our inner world, getting to understand our authentic selves. Reflection, a chance to be calm and to take on space and also reflect on feelings and the values words themselves. The atmosphere, which incorporates the positive relationships in a values-based school, developing the calm and purposeful environment. The curriculum, what is taught and how values are linked to every area of the curriculum, including those informal times, not just the formal lessons. Leadership, being self-caring as a leader, but also caring for the people in your team and in the community, and encouraging others to take on leadership responsibilities. All those are aspects of a values-based leader. And today's focus, the ethical vocabulary. Back in the 1990s, when Neil was first introducing values-based education in Oxfordshire, he'd noticed that children were coming into school without having these understanding of words such as trust and honesty. And he felt that this was part of children's education at home that was perhaps missing in some families. And so ethical vocabulary is the part of values that covers this. So this is just a brief summary of what we're going to cover in this session. We're going to look briefly at what is a value, because that's crucial. That's part of the ethical vocabulary. We need to know what we mean by a value. We're going to think about how you're going to select the values for your community, your school, and how you're going to plan to include those values in the life of the school. And finally, we're going to look at how you can deepen the understanding of those values. So, what is a value? We know that it's words such as trust, respect, honesty, tolerance, resilience. What actually is the definition of a value? I'd like you to pause for a few moments and reflect on this. If you're in a group It's a great opportunity to have a chat and a discussion about what we actually mean by a value. And hopefully you've now come up with some ideas. And this is our working definition of a value. It's not the only one. And you may have come up with something better in your own groups and in your own discussions. But this is the one we work with. A value is a principle that guides our thinking and our behaviour. This is a good way of introducing the concept of values to adults and children alike, to think about, well, what are those words? What do they do? What do they mean to us? This is not the definitive list of values, it's just an exemplar, really, of values words that are used in some schools that I've experienced, that I've visited. These are some of the more common values that are chosen, but others have come up with lots more. Take a few minutes to look at this list, to consider it, and think about what these words mean to you in your life, personally, and think of them also in terms of the context of your school community. How do these come into the life of the school? Are there other values that are meaningful to you that are not included here, that you might want to add to your own school list? Just take a few minutes to discuss this if you're in a group, or to take time to reflect on it personally. Perhaps make some notes if you're alone watching this presentation. Now, it's really important in introducing the values that all stakeholders are actually consulted in the choice of which values are important in your community. This is one way of doing this, and it's another exercise that you can do in your group, or at a different time you can prepare to do this, where we put just some of the values on a card, and we ask people in groups, in mixed groups, if you like, of pupils, of governors, of parents, of staff, and not just teaching staff. It's important that all staff are involved in this decision making. And those staff, those people are asked to order those values in something like this, perhaps, in a diamond 9 formation, where they think about, well, which is the most important in our school, which is the least important, which ones perhaps from a list do we not think are important at all, and we won't include those at all. And in this way, in discussion about the merit of the different values words, we can come to a community decision on which are the most important values for our community going forward. And this is how the school selects their focus values. Now, once those values are selected, or even before they're selected, you need to think about how you're going to bring those stakeholders on board. How are you going to involve staff, parents, pupils, governors? How can they be brought together to have this discussion? It could be through a meeting. It could be by sending out questionnaires. It could be through a parents' evening when you know that you'll have lots of parents together at the school. Or you could use an event like a sports day or a concert or a presentation when you know you've got lots of people together. And that is the opportunity to ask people, well, which values are important to you and to our community? How do we choose the ones that really matter most? It's also important that all staff attend training together, that they all hear this message, that they all understand the commitment to values and to the 7 aspects. So the next question is actually, okay, we've chosen our words. These are the values that are important to us. How do we organise? How do we focus on these? Many schools focus on one value per month, and these are spread over 22 months because in our country we have the month of August away from school. I know in other countries the month may change, but invariably the children do have 1 month where they're not in school, so 11 values in the year. However, this isn't the way that it has to be done. You can choose to have 1 value per term. You can choose to have 1 value per every so many weeks. It is entirely up to the school and the way your school year is structured. When you choose your value, you need to consider what's happening at that time of year. So in this example from a school, they have chosen peace and courage for the month of November, courage in year A and peace in year B, with the idea that that's the time when we're considering the sacrifices made by the soldiers in the 2 world wars, and therefore it makes sense to focus on those 2 values. On the other hand, you may have different festivals that you're celebrating in your school, different things that happen at certain times of the year, and it's important that those things are taken into consideration to make the values more meaningful and have the right context. It's entirely up to you, but it's something that's worth pausing to consider now. Now, the next thing that a values-based school needs to do is to surround yourself with the values. So the values appear in displays all around the school, in community areas, in each classroom. In my schools, each class had their own values board. In community areas, perhaps in the entrance hall, we might have something as simple as this basket of pebbles with values words on them. Just prompts thinking, prompts discussion, just reminds everybody that this is a values-based school. In Raceleys in Warwickshire, they have this wonderful poster which includes all their values and their school name and their school motif. In Ardsley, they're a church school. They're an Anglican church school, and therefore they've linked their value of peace to Advent and the Christmas story. And that's there openly and explicitly displayed for the children to consider the link between peace and Christmas. Again in Ardsley, they decided to choose 3 of their school values as their core values, and this was a decision made by the children of the school. They chose these 3 core values, which are in fact featured on a sculpture outside the school, which the children walk under every day as they enter the school grounds. So it reminds them these are our core values: joy, friendship, and determination. Another way of displaying this is an outside display where the values words are in a tree. In Coleshill School in Norfolk in UK, they decided to develop a little character for each of their school values. You can see each character was an animal. They are designed by the children, and if we show you a close-up, you can see that the characteristics of each animal are also linked to the value. So Jake, the just jackdaw, shows fairness, linked to justice. Sydney, the compassionate centipede, shows sympathy, again linked to compassion. And Raj, the resilient rabbit, shows perseverance, because it was felt that perseverance is strongly linked with resilience. These are just touching on the ideas that different schools have used in order to embed the understanding of the values words. The ethical vocabulary becomes embedded in the life of the school. The adult sees every opportunity to model the values. and also to refer to them explicitly. In this slide, consider the values that the children may be demonstrating as they observe the 3D printer. There's trust in the very precious and fragile piece of technology being explored by children. They show cooperation and respect as they share the experience. Perseverance as they try to understand how it works. Patience as they wait for the results of its work. There are many opportunities during the school day when teachers can actually talk about the values shown by the children. Another way in which the ethical vocabulary is developed is through behaviour management. This is actually quite a big part of developing ethical vocabulary. A VbE school has many ways to acknowledge positive behaviour. We talk about behaviour choices, and we praise good choices for behaviour. We don't label a child for poor behaviour, we label the behaviour. That might have been a poor choice. You are not a poor child for showing that choice or making that choice. The praise for good behaviour uses the language of values. So we talk about showing great responsibility by picking up a piece of litter. We talk about respect for the environment when a child does something respectful, or respect for other people when they hold a door open. We don't just say thank you, we say thank you for showing respect. Another way of acknowledging good choices is by giving awards such as Star of the Week or any similar awards. But when those awards are given, they're given for a specific values-based reason. So Lucy in this slide has been awarded Star of the Week for her perseverance in the elections. We don't know what that means exactly, but it's enough to show Lucy that it is for her perseverance. She understands why she's been made Star of the Week. In talking to the children in a lesson, a teacher may point out that Jim listened respectfully today to other people's opinions. Teachers may discuss in a story, what values did Red Riding Hood show today in the story? Which values did you need to draw on to work through that tricky maths problem? There are many, many opportunities for bringing values into the school day. So values-based behaviour management is always couched in positive terms. There are no do nots, only please do's. They refer to values. We talk about how we show our values and how they are core to our behaviour choices. A class code is created by each class. Here's a child in Lincolnshire showing me the codes for each class in her school. They're different because they have been created by the children in that class. And the teacher just acts as the scribe. The children think about what do we need to do and say in order to have a positive experience of learning in our class. And eventually, we hope, the children will actually, eventually the children will actually take ownership of this behaviour management themselves. And so you get examples like this in a values-based school, where a child has actually made a value box and has put in various different values slips and invited children to take one and try to show it throughout the day. Good luck, and please put the slip back after, as they say. That's a lovely example of how children take on the ownership of the ethical vocabulary for themselves. There are other ways of deepening the understanding of these values-based words. One of the main ways that I've seen used in many, many schools, including my own, is circle time. You can easily find more information on the internet of this. If you search circle time or Jenny Mosley for ideas, you should be able to find lots of resources. But basically, it's a structured forum where the children and their teacher sit in a circle so that everyone is equal. There are some rules of respect and listening to each other. These can be actually run with very small children all the way up to adults. And it gives them a forum where they can discuss the values and deepen their understanding. It works best in terms of supporting values-based education if you can plan for these, so that if you know which value you're covering this month, then you plan some stimuli to get your circle times started and get the discussion going. With younger children, a story works really, really well, or perhaps with older ones, a poem, or even an object, or an anecdote about something that's happened to you, something personal where you're sharing. It gives children a chance to listen to other people's opinions as well as formulating their own, which always helps to deepen their thinking. Another brilliant vehicle for deepening understanding of values-based words is philosophy for children. It's another structured time, works brilliantly with older children and going up through high school as well. And it gives them a chance to pose and discuss really challenging questions. There are, again, lots of resources online to find out more about planning for philosophy for children. There is Separate in the UK, and also the Philosophy Man, who will, if you sign up to those emails, will share free resources every couple of weeks. And will support you and even answer your emails if you have questions about how to actually do this. But just to give you a taster, these are some of the questions that children come up with. And the idea is that they come up with a question for the philosophy discussion, and then they vote on which question they want to talk about. This is one, is lying ever a good thing? You give that question to adults and they will really have it. Quite a heated discussion about that. Is giving more important than receiving? Or even, is a more emotional person more or less likely to be a good person? Definitely worth spending some time on these questions. And they can be more closely linked to values if that's the way you want to go. It develops the thinking skills of children and deepens the way they listen. So well worthwhile. These are some of the resources that the Philosophy Man will share quite freely online. Would you rather is another fun way, and a question that you can have in your classroom to keep discussion going. So we've talked a lot about the values words within the school. And they can't stay just within the school, they need to go beyond the school. So in your newsletter to parents, I used to send one out every week. That's not necessarily to do it every week, but it's certainly worthwhile doing a regular newsletter to parents so that they hear about the value. In mine, we had a section here on the value of the month. Sometimes it would just have quotes, sometimes an anecdote about something that had happened at school or something we covered at school. But always a little reminder to parents, this is what we are focusing on at the moment. This is our value of the month. This is important in our school. Likewise, having some sort of sign outside the school that says we're a values school. This is the statue that was outside my school. It's a little bronze statue designed by some of the children, and it shows an adult supporting a child, supporting the world. And the thinking is that the adult shares their values, the child internalises those values and takes them forward to support the world in their adulthood. And of course, the best way to make real engagement with parents and to go beyond the school is to actually get the children to do it for you. So here, a sticker is designed so that a child could go home wearing the sticker proudly, but it just says that Logan showed the value of friendship. Please ask me how. So we're asking the child to actually verbalise why they've been rewarded, what they did, and explain it to parents and share. So finally, we're proud that work like this is common in VbE schools, where a child has actually explained very clearly resilience. Pupils in VbE schools are articulate and confident to use their ethical vocabulary, and it's something that parents will comment on. They are surprised when their 4-year-old goes home and explains what cooperation or resilience is, but they're also very, very pleased and happy to share. I leave you with this quote from Confucius about the 3 levels of wisdom. Through these presentations, you've heard and seen the impact of VbE and how you can introduce it to your school. But this is only the beginning of wisdom. By doing and living the values, you will really understand the impact of values-based education. Thank you so much for your attention, your interest in VbE. I sincerely wish you every success on the next step of your values journey.